I'm Tanya Nabnani
And I'm Himadri Malwani
from the team Catalyst
Collectives.
We both are currently in 12th grade studying at Jain Institution.
And this is our take on Swiggy's business case.
So, for the thesis statement, Swiggy's financial instability supermodel app relies on two capital intensive models, which being its food delivery and its capital intensive Instamart, which has resulted in persistent loss and a fragile consumer base. That being said, it stands exactly in stark contrast to its rival Zomato, which in turn its strategy is disciplined diversification through a profitable super brand such as Blinkit. It has demonstrated a superior unit economics to Swiggy in comparison, a stronger market position, and a clear path to success, which Swiggy clearly lacks in the current statement.
Now we're going to go over the problems. Problem 1, dual engine. Now Swiggy is running two expensive businesses at once. Its food delivery business and its Instamart. Now instead of diversifying, both pull on the same resources like riders, warehouses, etc. Now then when consumer demand soften or capital inflows tightens, both arms, which are our both brands, Swiggy and Instamart, they burn cash, heavy cash burn, which in results, it's leaving EBITDA in a loss. Now, the core issue here is that both model needs high utilization to break even steady orders for dark stores, dense routes for riders, and scale for ads fees. Now, pushing both at the same time makes it harder to reach that efficiency, so Swiggy ends up with a two cash draining business instead of a one stable engine.
Right. And we both came up with certain solutions based on already existing strategy models, such as the BCG matrix, the Shell DPM, and much more on that basis. So we used BCG matrix insight in this as our strategy, main strategy tool, because essentially BCG growth share matrix is basically placing the businesses into four main quadrants: stars, cash cows, question marks, and dogs, based on their market growth rate and relative market share. Now, the food delivery is basically the cash cow. Why, if you may ask? The food delivery has a strong market position, around 45% share, etc. But the growth rate has slowed down to around 16% YOY, sorry. Now, it no longer delivers an explosive growth, which it lacks by a lot. It has scale, loyalty basis, but brand recognition is far behind. It should be treated instead like a profit engine rather than that. It means cutting the excessive discounting, which we will cover later in our problems, the reducing of the cash burn, and the maximization of the operating efficiency. The second portion of it in the second quadrant is the Instamart, which being the star. Why? Because Instamart is growing at a heavy rate of 108 YOY with a gross order value of 5,655 crore. But this growth is again highly capital intensive with widening losses which keep pertaining. Compared to Blinkit, Instamart has a way lower average order value, around 527 rupees, and weaker density in general. Instamart is a high growth, high potential unit, but it's not yet profitable. It's not yet there. Treated correctly, it can transition into a cash cow in the future, but only if the unit economics improve. Now, to take action on this strategic tool, we have to pursue the selective growth, meaning invest in the tier one, the metro clusters with high density and spending power, not focusing on both together, and consolidate rather than expanding the tier two, being the Instamart, which honestly becomes more balanced in nature in general.
Problem 2, the AOV illusion, which is average order value. Now, Swiggy has been showing rise in its average order value, with Instamart's AOV jumping to 16%. And now this AOV is rising because there's a mix towards high-priced non-grocery items like household goods and personal cares, while the original daily grocery baskets like milk, vegetables, snacks are not growing as much. This diverts the aim of Instamart from being a quick grocery store to mini Amazon, which then misleads its goal. If Swiggy celebrates its AOV growth while ignoring its frequency, it risks weaker customer stickiness, higher costs, and business model that looks strong in number but fragile in reality. This is the illusion that has been given by Swiggy's average order value. If Swiggy celebrates its AOV growth while ignoring its frequency, it risks weaker customer stickiness, higher costs, and business model that looks strong in number but fragile in reality. This is the illusion that has been given by Swiggy's average order value. If Swiggy celebrates its AOV.
Now, the first strategy tool that we are going to be focusing directly upon is the Ansoff growth matrix, which is basically Instamart's growth path. Now, the main goal for this entire growth matrix, is to drive frequency of the core delivery grocery basket, such as milk, vegetables, bread, snacks, etc. Now, we could do that through subscriptions and order renewals. So customers can like subscribe to a daily milk delivery or a weekly essential pack and whatsoever. Now, this helps build a habit, a kind of lock-in system so that customers can use Instamart every day and not just once in a while. We could also develop the products such as new products and existing marketing. For example, we can expand the basket sizes rather than losing the groceries in the process. Now, we can also cross-sell offers, for example, buy milk and eggs and you get 10% off in a detergent. So this would help kind of create the AOU to increase gradually and naturally rather than really losing its grocery core by heart at heat of every order. Now for the third problem.
Swiggy has heavily relied on discounts and promotions to acquire and retain customers and to keep a good customer relationship. In other words, the company isn't making money off orders, it's effectively buying transactions. The problem becomes worse because competitors like Zomato and Blinkit are also aggressive with discounts, making it to a race to the bottom. Now, customers hop between platforms depending on where they get the best deal, which means loyalty is shallow.
So the strategy tools that we are using for this particular problem, is the Porter's five forces, which essentially means that why exactly do the discount wars exist in nature? Well, there are like three main points for it. Main being the high rivalry. The food, the quick economic sector is dominated by a duopoly, which includes Swiggy, Zepto versus Blinkit. Now, since the products are nearly identical in nature, the same groceries, the same restaurants, the competition shifts to price and delivery speed, which leads to the discount battles in nature, which again leads to the second main point being the low switching cost for consumers. The users can easily jump between apps in seconds and it doesn't really make a difference. Loyalty is weak until it's tied to like a habit basket, which was considered and spoke about in the previous problem. So, we're going to talk about the CLV and the customer acquisition cost as well. The customer acquisition cost is basically that Swiggy spends a lot more on the discounts, referral bonuses, ads, etc., rather than focusing on diversing their products and their businesses, which essentially does attract very first timer users, but it does not use them to stay in the same app. So if an order is placed by a user 2 or 3 times before churning, the CLV remains low. The mismatching risk is basically that Swiggy loses way more money with every new user. The sustainable growth only comes when people keep ordering without the discounts. So, something that Swiggy should take away from this is that they should track whether every rupee is spent on CAC or if it's generating the long-term loyalty or it's just like a one-time usage. Now we go on to our second section of the case study, being the comparison between the two rivals, Swiggy and Zomato, Blinkit. So this will kind of give us inside information on both of them. So first we go through all the data, then we go on to their individual consumer insights and so on. So their revenue for FY25 was in Zomato was 20,243 rupee crore, and in Swiggy instead was 15,227 crore. Now, for the business model, in Swiggy has a narrower ecosystem, meaning it has food delivery plus Instamart. It kind of lacks that B2B diversification that Zomato pertains. Now, Zomato, on the other hand, has dining out, ads, Hyperpure, which is B2B, Blinkit. So it has this food ecosystem in its own model. Now, the perception that every user holds to both of those apps, both of those companies, is that Zomato is trusted, which Swiggy is clearly lacking right now. It has a premium brand, it has fewer service complaints by record, and strong loyalty. On the other hand, Swiggy has frequent issues such as the delays, the cancellations, tampered items. Like, who would we be if we didn't receive a melted ice cream in our Swiggy order? So there is just a lot of trust deficit in Swiggy as an app in general. Now, for the brand strategy, the super brand model, which Zomato holds, is Zomato plus Blinkit for groceries and food, plus strong creative marketing and Zomoland events for the marketing processes. But Swiggy, on the other hand, it has a super app model. So it's like all in one convenience, but also diluted brand identity. It doesn't come off as strong as Zomato does. Zomato has more diversity, Swiggy lacks that diversity. The basic conclusion we reach to this point is that Zomato plus Blinkit hold a clear and sustainable path, which has a leadership edge to the market through its synergies, profitability, etc. Swiggy plus Instamart is strong in scale, but it's financially vulnerable to losses and profits with sustainability concerns until like a major change is made into the company. Now we have covered the second part. As our structure goes, we are going to cover the statistics next, which talk about our personal data analysis of everything that Swiggy could do before and then after the main same models are implemented. The before data comes from exactly the Swiggy website and its reports, but the after data is assumed expectation that we as a team came up with on basis of how it would be implemented and how it has been implemented in other companies.
Now, Swiggy's food delivery business shows a steady growth in the orders, which is 629 million in FY25, and its GOV being 28,783 crore rupees. Now, this is supported by a higher AOV of rupees 458. However, the margins remain weak in the contributions, and the margins still at negative 4%, and its EBITDA at negative 14%. The company's profitability metrics showed improvements, with contribution margin rising to 3.9 and its annual adjusted EBITDA loss margin narrowing from 12.4 to a negative 0.9. Now, over the 2 years period. However, while the revenue continued to grow quarterly, the company's losses widened to 8,000, a negative 8,000 and 131 million in Q1 of FY26. Instamart is scaling fast, but it's yet to crack a profitable, showing growth-led strain.
Okay, so now we will cover the after data. Now, again, this statistics is purely an assumption of our understanding of the case study. And the after data is based mostly on the three problems, the three core problems that we genuinely focused upon on this case study. And the after data, as you can see, has a stark difference to what it was before and what it is now. And as you can see on the screen, the data is very different and it kind of shows how much Swiggy has, like potential wise, and how much it could do in its own company rights. And this was our presentation of the case study that we presented based on Swiggy as a company. We both, as a whole, we need to genuinely thank the judges for taking their time out to interview this case. And yes, to conclude, we were very grateful for this opportunity and we hope to see you soon.